Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First off, thanks for visiting my channel. I appreciate you coming by. If you wouldn't mind, it helps out with the promotion of my channel by YouTube if you hit the like button or if you leave a comment. So I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'd also love it if you'd hit that like button before you leave. Thank you in advance for that. Today I'm going to do something I wanted to do a video on for a long time. I was kind of waiting for a good weather day when we had a nice, clear sunny day outside because I wanted to do it outside. And what I wanted to do was one of the types of freeform castings that a lot of people do, and it's called beam casting. And so today I'm going to take some scrap silver, I'm going to melt it in a crucible, pour it over some dry pinto beans, and see what kind of cool shapes come out, and then we'll make a piece of jewelry out of it. So I think I'm going to make a pendant probably. Maybe we'll even put a stone on it just for giggles. So before we do that though, I need to thank some people. First of all, my YouTube channel has grown immensely over the past year. I'm up to about 4,600 subscribers, which is fantastic. I appreciate all of you. And some of the nice comments and things you guys leave really make my day, so thank you for that. I really appreciate all of the financial contribution too. It helps keep me able to get supplies to produce more of these kind of videos. So the other group I wanted to thank is my patrons over on Patreon, and I have a new one today, and I'd like to thank Carla J for joining up for my Patreon. I appreciate her support and the support of all the others over there. You guys are a great community. I appreciate all of the cool resources that you've shown me, and I hope you're getting something out of what I show you. So if you're interested in signing up for Patreon, you should check the video description. It's got a detailed description of some of the tiers and what's available there and how much it costs. If you just are tired of looking at ads, the lowest tier at $5 a month is a great deal. And you get all these YouTube videos without any of the ads. So there's also some other tiers that include some things like exclusive tutorials and even some live streams for some of the upper tiers. So check it out. Check out the other links in my video description. There's a lot of useful links, and let's get started on this. These are fun. One of the things as you start pursuing this hobby or vocation, if it's a job for you, that you'll find is you start building up quite a bit of silver scrap after a while, and once you do that, you need to either sell it back to get some new fabricated wire stock or sheet stock or whatever you need, or you need to find some other use for it. And one of the uses is you can make freeform castings out of it, which are a pretty good seller. So there's a couple of different kinds. The more common ones that I see are the bean castings and the broom castings. Bean castings being where we take some molten silver and pour it over the top of a bowl of dry beans and see what kind of cool, interesting shapes come out as it solidifies there. Broom castings, I typically use pine needles, but broom bristles all lined up in the same direction. Natural broom bristles, don't use synthetic ones if you try that. Kind of loosely hooked together. I usually use a hair rubber band for that, and just dump silver over the top of that, and it kind of burns its way down and gives you kind of a different looking freeform castings. And then of course some people dump molten silver into water, which gives you a lot of times it's like sort of mushroom tops, or I think what happens is when the silver hits the surface of the water, it immediately flash turns that surface into steam, and it creates a bubble in the silver as it's cooling, and it creates kind of a cup shape. So I see a lot of those people are using in jewelry, and those are kind of fun. But today we're going to do the bean ones. So I'm going to gather up a little bit of scrap silver. I'm going to put it in a crucible, and then we'll pour it over some dry beans once I get it completely molten, and we'll see what kind of cool shapes we get. So let's go outside and do that. Okay, we're out in the backyard today because we're going to do some freeform castings. And today we're going to do bean castings, which is where you take some dry pinto beans and we melt some silver in a crucible, and we dump it over the top while it's still molten, so it forms, it cools off in the cavities between the beans. And that way you get all sorts of fun, cool shapes. So that's what we're going to do today. And let me show you next what we need to have out here to do this. Okay, so like I said, I have some dry pinto beans. You can use any kind of dry beans as long as they're big enough to where there's some spaces between the beans. I've tried some other things, like I tried rice one time, and rice, the grains are too small so that the cavities between them are small enough that the silver will not run down into those cavities, so it just puddles on top of it and creates just kind of a flat thing, so that's no good. But these ones, these pinto beans or anasazi beans or whatever kind of beans you want to use that are a little bit bigger, those work great. So I put them in a little stainless bowl. I put some heat protection down here. I have a little crucible with a handle on it, and it's got a little pour spout on this side. You always want to have some water next to you so you can put it out, because as soon as you pour the molten metal onto the beans, they're going to catch on fire. And that's mostly the reason that I'm outside doing this, because they smoke a lot and make a lot of bad smell when they catch on fire. And so I didn't want to stink up the whole house. So for the torch, I put a big tip on it. It's the biggest tip I have, which is a number 3. And so I picked out some clean scrap, which is mostly just sterling silver with I think I threw 1 bezel in there just to offset any solder that's in there, so we get a pretty good mix. So I'm going to put some of that in this crucible here. We'll probably do this twice to see. Well, we'll do it as many times as we need to get something we can use, because I want to make a pendant and I want it to look kind of cool. So let's get this going. Bright sunlight, it's going to be a little hard to see the flame, but I'm jiggling it so I get to feel whether it's fully melted or not. I always heat it a little bit beyond the point where it's just liquid. You want to keep the flame pointed at the metal while you're pouring it into the beans. Otherwise it'll solidify too soon. And you pour some water on it to put it out. You can hear the metal quenching in there. See the kind of fun shapes you get out of this? There's one. See if there's any other ones in there. I'm going to dump some of the water out here. All right, we're going to do one more. Okay. All right, so I'll fish out whatever's in there and we'll take them downstairs and we'll see how things come out when we make some cool designs out of these. These two were from the second batch, and they're a little on the big side for what I'm doing, I think. Although you can, when you get these bigger ones like this, you can cut off portions of them. Like if I cut this off right about here, it would make this one here would be a good size for making something out of, probably. And you could cut it in some various spots over here to get smaller pieces. Let's see what else we got here. This one has some potential. It's got a few spots where it's kind of flimsy though, like that one's pretty flimsy. So I'd either reinforce that with some solder, or I'd cut that off if I was going to incorporate that one. This one's pretty good. So that one. I was thinking maybe I'd hook two of them together, you know, so one's swinging from the other one. These two might be a good bet for that. Let me take a minute and sketch something up with this, and I'll think about what I can do. I think I'm going to use these two. So I don't draw too much up, but basically I was thinking, I haven't decided whether I'm putting it this way or this way. I think probably that way. But it kind of sits nicely like that. If I tried to position it like this, it's not going to sit nice. So I think we'll go like that. And then this one, I think we can kind of just do like that. And just hook a jump ring on here and then a split jump ring on this one, and we'll hook it through and solder it together. Put another ring up top here and a bail. And I think I'm going to put a morganite on it. I have these little oval morganites, and I've been kind of wanting to use one for a piece on the channel, and I just haven't had the right piece. They're very pretty. They're just kind of a pale kind of peach color, but really nice and sparkly and clean, eye clean kind of. So morganite, if you don't know, is it's the same stone as aquamarine and emerald. There's several other varieties like goshenite and what's the yellow one called? Heliodor, I believe. So there's a bunch of different names for the different colors of beryl, but the most well-known ones being emerald and aquamarine. So we're going to use the pink variety today. So I'll be making a bezel for that, and I think I'm going to hook these two together like I said, and I think maybe for the stone where we should put him on here, I bet I could find either here maybe or up here. I don't know. I'll make that decision after I get the bezel made, and I'll kind of position it on there and see how it looks. So, in advance, just for time's sake, I made a little one of these kind of bales. If you haven't seen how to make this kind of bale, it's kind of the standard bale I use for a lot of stuff. I'll put a link up here for the video that I made quite a while back about this. I like to keep a few of these around because if you have a pendant you want to finish quick, you can just throw this on there and it's a nice clean looking bale once it's all polished up. But yeah, let's start with a bezel for this little morganite, and then we'll solder these guys together and see how it comes out. If you're new to my channel, I always use hard sheet solder for pretty much everything, and I use a spray-on flux called My-T-Flux. Bezel we're going to use for this stone, I'm going to cut it shorter because it's a small stone, but this is I usually just buy this at this size because it's easy enough to cut down for shorter stuff. It's 26 gauge, 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip, so it's a little bit on the thicker side as far as bezel goes, but I like it. And start by fouling this flat. For me, with a little stone like this, I have to use my pliers kind of to get the shape of the bezel started. Otherwise, it's hard to get it snug up against there. So if I do kind of pre-form it like this, I can kind of sit it over the top of it. Oops. That looks pretty good. And then when I cut these, I always leave a little bit excess for filing purposes, usually about as thick as the pick that I'm using here. That gives me enough to file a little bit off. There, little guy. Okay, so I'm going to cut this a little bit narrower. You could just as well buy a narrower bezel, I just don't happen to have any. It's funny when you do bean castings and the beans catch on fire, they don't smell too terribly good. But when you do the broom castings, and like I said, I use pine needles, and they catch on fire, it always smells really good. Although a little bit like a forest fire. Which unfortunately over the past few years we've had quite a few in the area that made it smell like that. There was a couple of years ago where it was like most of Colorado was on fire. It was really quite bad. Air quality anyway. Going to reshape this back into the shape of my stone. File that difference in height off. So when you're doing a faceted stone like this one, in order for it to sit upright, you need to have kind of a little ring around the inside of some sort, whether it's sheet or whether it's a pre-made step bezel of some sort, or if you, like I use a couple of little rings of 18 gauge wire stacked on top of each other. Doesn't really matter as long as you get it up to the right height. But that's the way that I do it. So I need to find myself a little 18 gauge, and then let's see if I got some laying around here. Well, there's a piece. So I just need to make a couple of little jump rings that'll fit right in there. You could also, if you wanted to, you can buy pre-made settings for stuff, or you could put you could mount a prong setting on here if you wanted to, or do a lot of different stuff. I used to sell a lot of these just with no stones on them. People seem to just like the interesting shapes. And it's fun because no two ever come out just the same. One of my good friends mounts little ones on top of ring bands. Those make for interesting rings. I make bracelets periodically where these bean castings are kind of the components of the bracelet, the links. I hook them all together. It makes for a nice big nuggety looking bracelet. If you'd be interested in me showing you how to do that, leave a comment in the comments and I'll maybe consider showing you how to do that. And one thing you want to make sure though, if you're doing this kind, is make sure that these are completely flat. So they sit. There's no little waves in them or anything. See, I've just made kind of a little pile of solder chips there. I'm just going to set this right on top of it and then heat it like I would normally for a bezel. And as long as you're in contact with it, it should just kind of flow right up in there. Alright, so got that piled down to a nice clean surface. Okay, connect these guys. Well, actually, let's put this on here first. I think it's going to sit like this. It might sit nicely if I could mount it somewhere, like right here. I have to make sure I don't get it soldered to the, any part of the top of the bezel, otherwise I won't be able to set the stone. So I need to figure out a way to get it where I want it. If I can get it to solder just kind of like that, that would be fine. And I have solder on the bottom here, so chances are good. If I heat this up to just the right temperature, I should be able to get it to stick right there. The only problem being is getting it to sit there while it's doing it. I suppose I ought to probably flex this guy too a little bit. That's pretty close to what I was thinking. Let's go just like that. So again, there's quite a bit of mass difference between the bezel and the beam casting here, so I'm going to heat mostly the beam casting. The bezel will get close just by being in proximity to the heat that I'm applying to this thing. Okay, looks like we got a good connection there. So now, I need to attach these two. So I'm going to make some little rings. I think I'm going to use 16 gauge to connect these. I have a little piece of 16 gauge. So I'm going to make a couple of little small rings. Okay, I think I'm going to minimize the look of the rings by soldering it this way on this one, where it's partially onto this. So I'm going to cut a little piece out of this. I should be able to just kind of solder it right like that. So I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder onto the tips of these, maybe a little bit on here too, just so I get a good connection. And then we can use the tweezers to just pick it up and attach it. Okay, so I need to kind of keep it parallel to the bezel, so this thing keeps shifting on me a little. I'm going to want this one to be able to go through this, just like that, and be attached to this thing here. So if I want to be able to solder that closed after I'm done, I want to attach it and it's sideways like this. Let me figure out which way I like this thing. I don't like it that way, so I'm going to solder this on just like that. But the big bean castings, you know, take a little bit longer to get that much mass that hot, you know. So. That looks like it'll work. Before I do that, though, I'm going to solder a jump ring on the top of this, going horizontally for my little bail to go through like this. So if you're worried about soldering this to this accidentally, because there's some solder here and there's some solder here, two things can help. One, I position the solder joint over here and there's no actual solder on the wire where this is in connection with that wire. It's all here, here, here. The other thing is, these are two separate pieces. I don't really want anything over here to flow or solder to anything. So if I just heat this piece, since it's a separate piece, to the point where this gets hot enough to where I can pick it there, then we'll be good. And we don't have to. Okay, so I put it in the magnesia block here so that I can just pick solder this here. A couple of things that I worry about when I'm doing something like this is that other pieces will fall off while I'm soldering them on. I know a lot of people talk to me about that. So what I've done is I've kind of pushed it down a little bit so this ring here isn't elevated at all, and that'll prevent that from dropping off of this piece. The other thing about this is I'm soldering two completely different pieces together, and I'm not really soldering them together, I'm soldering one around the other here. So I don't need to get this one hot at all, since I don't really want anything to solder on this. I just want this ring to solder onto itself right there, so I just need to heat this piece alone. If that makes any sense? Same deal goes for this one. I don't need to get anything hot but the bail itself here. In fact, I don't want to. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick solder that right there. I need a little smaller piece of solder than I have here, though. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the pickle for a little while, and then I'm going to polish this and see how it looks. I like to finish a piece in one day so I can get it out the next day. Sometimes with bean castings I will tumble polish them, which doesn't really polish them much, it just kind of burnishes the surface for a long time, and I want to get this done before tonight gets too late. So we'll see. I'll let it pickle for a while. I'll polish it by hand a little bit. We'll see how it looks. If we need to, we'll throw it in the tumbler for a few hours. So, but it's pickle time. I pushed this down in here because I was checking to see if the bezel was the right height, and it is. I didn't have to do any adjusting at all for that. I just kind of got lucky on that one. A lot of times I'll have to file it down just a bit. But now we can go ahead and set that stone. I may have to use a knife blade to get into this little spot over here. that a little poke from behind again. That's more secure. Alright, so there's our little pendant. It's got a nice little morganite in it. It's hard to see in this light, but it's got a pretty peach color to it. I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end of the video. So, okay, well that was doing a freeform bean casting. I hope you enjoyed that. One of these days I'll do one about broom castings and maybe sometime water castings, although I have less experience with that. So before you leave, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps out a lot. And you know, check out the video description links for some of the things that are relevant to the channel and ways to support the channel if you're interested in that. You can buy me a coffee. There's some cool merch down there, like my design idea book, which is a great seller actually. It has this nice graph paper in it that doesn't have the lines but just has the corner points, so it's nice for sketching stuff out on. And there's even a link to my website if you want to check out some of the jewelry that I make and, you know, maybe buy it for yourself. So you deserve it. Well, thanks for coming by today. Happy silversmithing. Take care.